I never thought I'd be fishing cremation ashes out of a garbage can, but there I was at midnight, trying to save what was left of the kindest woman I'd ever known. Grandma Rose had been my wife Janet's mother, but she'd treated me like her own son from the day we met. When Janet and I married 5 years ago, I inherited two stepchildren, Marcus, 17, and Chloe, 15, who made it clear they resented my presence. But Grandma Rose was different. She welcomed me with open arms, always asking about my work, remembering my birthday, and treating me better than my own family ever had. When she got sick last year, I was the one who drove her to appointments while Janet worked, and the kids complained about visiting the old lady. Grandma Rose passed away peacefully last Tuesday. After the funeral, we returned home with her ashes in a simple wooden urn. Janet was exhausted and went straight to bed. I expected the kids to show some respect for their grandmother's memory. I was wrong. Finally, Marcus said as soon as his mother was upstairs, "Now we don't have to pretend to care about the old bat anymore." Chloe giggled. Remember how she always smelled like mothballs and tried to hug us? I watched in horror as Marcus picked up the urn from the mantel. "What should we do with this thing?" "Just throw it away," Chloe said carelessly. "It's just some old dead woman now." "You can't be serious," I said, stepping forward. "That's your grandmother." Marcus rolled his eyes. "She's not our real grandmother anyway." "Grandma Rose loved you both," I said, my voice shaking with anger. "She left you money for college, bought you birthday presents every year." "Because Mom made her," Chloe said with a cruel laugh. "She probably hated us as much as we hated her." Before I could stop him, Marcus walked to the kitchen and dropped the urn into the trash can. The wooden container made a hollow thud as it hit the bottom. "There," he said, dusting off his hands. "Problem solved." I stood there in shock. "You threw your grandmother in the garbage?" "She's just ashes," Marcus said. "It's not like she can feel anything." That night, after everyone was asleep, I crept downstairs to the kitchen. I couldn't let Grandma Rose spend eternity in a landfill because of her heartless grandchildren. I pulled the urn from the trash, relieved to find it wasn't damaged. I took it to my workshop in the garage to clean it properly. As I wiped away the garbage residue, I noticed something strange. The urn felt heavier than it should have, and when I gently shook it, I could hear something rattling inside that didn't sound like ashes. I examined the urn more carefully. The lid was sealed with wax, but age had made it loose enough to remove if I was careful. I hesitated. Opening the urn felt like a violation. But the rattling sound was definitely not normal, and something deep inside told me she would have wanted me to investigate. With trembling hands, I carefully twisted the lid. It came free with a soft pop. Inside, as expected, were Grandma Rose's ashes in a sealed plastic bag. But nestled beside the bag was a small metal box that I'd never seen before. My heart pounded as I lifted it out. The box was old and tarnished, about the size of a jewelry case. There was an envelope taped to the top with my name written on it in Grandma Rose's familiar handwriting. I opened the envelope with shaking fingers and read, "My dear David, if you're reading this, then I'm gone and someone has discovered my little secret. I pray it's you and not those ungrateful children. Inside this box is something I've kept hidden for 60 years. When I die, I want you to have it, but only you. Janet would just give it to Marcus and Chloe, and they don't deserve what's inside. You've been the son I never had, the only one who showed me real love in my final years. You drove me to appointments, listened to my stories, and treated me with dignity when my own family saw me as a burden. The contents of this box will change your life, but more importantly, they'll prove something I've suspected for a long time about my daughter and grandchildren. Be careful who you trust, David. Some people only show their true nature when money is involved. Check the false bottom of the box. All my love, Grandma Rose." My hand was shaking so badly I could barely open the small latch. Inside, I found a stack of documents and jewelry wrapped in cloth. The first document was a bank statement. I blinked hard, thinking I was misreading the numbers. The account balance showed $847,000. The next paper was a will, dated just 3 months ago. I read it twice before the words sank in. Grandma Rose had left everything to me. Her entire estate, including her house, her investments, and a collection of antique jewelry. But that wasn't the most shocking part. Attached to the will was a private investigator's report. Grandma Rose had hired someone to investigate her own family after becoming suspicious about financial irregularities. The report revealed that Janet had been stealing from Grandma Rose for over 2 years. She'd been using her mother's credit cards, had taken out loans in her name, and had even tried to access her bank accounts. The total theft was over $50,000. But Marcus and Chloe were involved too. The report included photos of them using credit cards that belonged to their grandmother, receipts for expensive purchases, and bank records showing cash withdrawals. My wife and stepchildren had been systematically robbing an elderly woman, their own mother and grandmother. There was more. The investigator had recorded conversations where Janet complained about having to deal with the old woman and discussed plans to put Grandma Rose in a nursing home so they could sell her house. In one particularly cruel recording, I heard Chloe say, "I can't wait until she dies so we can finally get some real money." I felt sick. These people I'd been living with were monsters, and poor Grandma Rose hadn't known it. The false bottom of the box contained copies of everything: bank records, the will, the investigator's report, and something else that made my blood run cold. It was a recording device, still running. Grandma Rose had been recording conversations in her house for months, gathering evidence of her family's theft and cruelty. The jewelry in the box was stunning. Antique pieces that were clearly valuable. A note explained that they belonged to Grandma Rose's grandmother and had been passed down through generations. Their appraised value was over $200,000. I sat in my workshop until dawn, processing everything I'd learned. The woman I'd married was a thief and a liar. Her children were cruel and greedy. And Grandma Rose had known all of it, documenting their crimes while enduring their abuse. The next morning, Janet woke up in a good mood. "I'm glad that's over with," she said, referring to her mother's death. "Now we can get back to normal. What about settling her estate?" I asked carefully. Janet shrugged. "Mom didn't have much. There's probably nothing left after her medical bills." She was lying to my face, having no idea that I knew the truth. Marcus came downstairs and immediately noticed the trash had been emptied. "Good," he said. "I was worried we have to smell dead Grandma all week." That afternoon, I called the private investigator. James Rodriguez had been waiting for my call. "Mrs. Chin told me you'd be in touch eventually," he said. She was very thorough in her instructions about what to do after her death. We met at his office, where he presented me with even more evidence. Bank records going back 3 years, video surveillance from Grandma Rose's house showing Janet and the kids taking things, and recorded phone conversations where they discussed their thefts. "She wanted to make sure you had everything you needed to protect yourself," Rodriguez explained. She was worried they might try to contest the will. But Grandma Rose had thought of that too. She'd undergone psychological evaluation to prove her mental competency, had the will witnessed by multiple parties, and had documented every instance of her family's financial abuse. 3 days later, Janet got a call from Grandma Rose's attorney requesting a meeting to discuss the estate. She was excited, assuming there would be some inheritance to claim. I went with her to the lawyer's office, where we sat across from Attorney Miller, a stern woman in her 60s. "Thank you for coming," Miller said. "I have some important information about Mrs. Chin's estate." Janet leaned forward eagerly. "How much did she leave?" Miller's expression was cold. "Mrs. Chun left a substantial estate. Over $1 million in total assets." Janet's eyes widened. "1 million? I had no idea." "However," Miller continued, "you won't be receiving any of it." The color drained from Janet's face. "What do you mean?" "Mrs. Chun left her entire estate to David Henderson, your husband." Janet turned to stare at me in shock. "That's impossible. I'm her daughter." Miller pulled out a thick folder. "Mrs. Chun also left instructions for me to share some information with you. She hired a private investigator to document your theft from her accounts over the past 3 years. She spread out bank records, photographs, and receipts across the desk." Janet's face went from pale to ashen as she recognized the evidence of her crimes. "The total amount stolen comes to $52,847, Miller continued. "Mrs. Chen also documented instances of emotional abuse, neglect, and exploitation." "This is insane," Janet stammered. She was senile. Mrs. Chun underwent psychological evaluation to confirm her mental competency specifically because she anticipated this reaction, Miller said. She was completely lucid when she made these decisions. She handed Janet another document. This is a restraining order, also arranged by Mrs. Chun before her death. You and your children are banned from the property. Janet looked at me desperately. David, you can't believe this. We're married. We're family. I thought about Grandma Rose's ashes in the trash, about the cruel laughter of her grandchildren, about the years of theft and manipulation. I believe the evidence, I said quietly, and I believe Grandma Rose. The next week was chaos. Janet tried to contest the will, but Grandma Rose's preparations were bulletproof. Marcus and Chloe were furious when they learned about the inheritance they'd lost, but their anger turned to fear when they realized the evidence could send them to juvenile detention. I moved into Grandma Rose's house, which was beautiful and paid for. The antique jewelry alone was worth more than I'd made in 5 years. But the real treasure wasn't the money or the house. It was the lesson Grandma Rose had taught me about recognizing true character versus false loyalty. 6 months later, Janet called, crying and begging me to reconsider. The evidence of her thefts had come to light during our divorce proceedings, and she was facing criminal charges. I made mistakes, she sobbed, but we can work this out. We're family. I thought about that word, family. Janet had used it to justify her lies, her theft, her children's cruelty. But Grandma Rose had shown me what family really means. It's not about blood or marriage certificates. It's about love, respect, and showing up when someone needs you. Grandma Rose was my family, I told Janet. You were just people I lived with. I used part of the inheritance to establish a fund for elderly people who'd been financially abused by their families. The rest I invested carefully, following advice Grandma Rose had left in her papers. Every year on the anniversary of her death, I visit her grave with fresh flowers. Not because I have to, but because I want to. And every time I pass a trash can, I remember the night I rescued her ashes and found a treasure worth more than money. The knowledge that someone had loved me enough to trust me with their most precious secrets. The stepkids who threw her ashes away thinking she was worthless learned too late that she was worth more than they could ever imagine. And she'd made sure the person who truly valued her would be the one to benefit from that worth.